You're listening to the Secure AF podcast.
Welcome to the Secure AF podcast. We have a special guest today. We have Andrew Peters. He and I are going to be talking about a pretty serious topic. Serious topic in terms of what we see out in the world and how it's affected cybersecurity and the things that we do. But also the fact that this affects a lot of people. This is a special episode. We are episode number 99. And that means that our next episode will be episode 100. And we've got some special things planned. We're really excited about that we've gotten to 100. That's a lot of episodes of us coming out and just sitting and talking. So welcome, everyone. Glad you are here. This topic really kind of came up between Peters and I, and we both have experiences in some of this stuff, both from a professional level and a personal level. And I think it's really important to talk about, and that's stalking. We kind of look at this from cyberstalking, but I think it's important to really think about this from an overall perspective of stalking in general. And some of the things that we're going to talk about today is what is stalking, how to defend against it, what are the kinds of things people are doing to stalk. Really, I just want people to be safe and of course we might get into some of the stories later, but first, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming onto the podcast. This is an important topic. And sometimes it can get kind of dark in what we do, but I still think it's important to talk about this stuff so that we can protect people. So let's just get right into it. Stalking. Give us a definition. What would be kind of that textbook definition that you would give for what stalking is?
Well, it depends on every state law, as everything in terms of criminal acts, but. A good solid definition is that stalking is a willful and intentional series of multiple acts that would put a reasonable person in fear of great bodily harm or death.
Yep. A lot of my experience in the past has been around domestic violence, where an individual is being stalked by a significant other or someone who wanted to be their significant other. And that's where, a lot of the stuff that I did, before Alias, when I was doing personal CISO work, was helping people in terms of their privacy and dealing with that sort of thing. And we see it a lot, unfortunately. What are some of the things that you've seen, let's say, in the past couple of years that has really stood with you in terms of stalking, of the actual impact to the individual?
The main thing that I've seen, there's a lot of different forms to it, and I'll talk about some of those later. But the main things that I'm seeing, particularly as a college student, is, people that were in former relationships with each other, just basically harassing each other through social media, through unwanted communications, phone calls, emails, sometimes it is out of anger or wanting retribution for, a relationship that maybe did not end amicably, or they felt that they were wrong in the course of that relationship. But most commonly, it's just usually it's an extension of domestic abuse and mental abuse. And that it is just an extension of that behavior that extends beyond the relationship that they had together. It is a external manifestation of domestic violence.
Yeah, and it, when we talk about the relationships, the extension of the relationship, there may not have been a relationship.
That's true.
At least from both sides. There are those things. Now, we want to be careful because we have this concept of stalking that people talk about where they go out and they do open source intelligence, where they're finding information out about people. And that is important, and that's something we're going to talk about in terms of hiding or keeping your privacy. But I just want to be clear that the stalking part of it that we're talking about today is that that person feels that fear of death or fear that they're going to be attacked, or they're acting on it. It's not just going out and searching for information. It's sending them emails. It's calling them and showing up where they work. It's, all these different things. It's that extra piece that from a legal perspective is considered stalking. And I think that's important. I think it's important for people to understand that the open source intelligence or OSINT that we do in terms of finding out information about it, they call it stalking. They're going to stalk a new boyfriend or a new girlfriend or somebody that they see, at work or whatever. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that next level up of doing actions after you get all that information and causing fear with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another important thing as well is that cyberstalking is a component of traditional stalking. They go hand in hand together. We do see it's become a lot more recent lately where people are using the power of social media and unknown actors to ask them to contribute in the harassment of people. But, typically when, social media first really became a thing, cyber stalking was just a much smaller component of traditional stalking. And I think that that's still true. At the end of the day, it's the same behavior, just different means.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Talk to me a little bit about how do states see it? You talked about earlier about the different definitions of what stalking may be in the states, but give me a little bit about what are states looking at? What are the legislations that they have?
That's a very complicated question. It really depends on some states. The laws have been changing a lot recently. Really in the last 10 or 15 years, states have kind of, particularly with regards to cyber stalking, kind of had to take a step back and say, okay, the laws that we have on the books right now for stalking aren't really applicable to what's happening here. We need to do something about this. And so some states have, written into their laws, their own definitions of cyber stalking and what cyber stalking is and what constitutes, an actual violation of that statute. And they have very clear laws on it. Some states are a little bit more ambiguous. Some states basically say that cyber stalking is not really a crime. Call the police when, someone actually threatens you with violence. So it really kind of depends, but the law is changing and it is moving towards more of a proactive stance against cyber stalking and actually enabling law enforcement to have some means of combating it.
Yeah. And there is a difference between stalking and harassment. There's a lot of overlap on that. Someone will harass you while they're stalking you, but not all harassment is stalking. I mean, it's very odd, and we're not lawyers. And we don't really want to get into that particular conversation. It's more about kind of understanding what the words are, how we're using them, how some people might use them incorrectly. And we have to change how people talk about them so that when we talk about actually fixing the issue, that they know what we're talking about. Unfortunately, being on the internet, people will harass. They may not know you. They may not know anything about you. They just want to harass you. And that's a little different than stalking. So again, just a clarification of terms there. What do we know? And this is not really a trick question, but what do we know about how many people get stalked?
Well, we know a couple of things about stalkers and we know a couple of things about victim demographics. And these numbers are, kind of approximations, but I'm sure most people that have studied forensics or criminology have probably seen close to these numbers somewhere. We know that most stalkers are white men between the ages of 18 and 35, and that they are of average intelligence and slightly above average income. In terms of the actual demographics of people that we see being stalked, it's mostly women, of course. Women ages 18 to 24, especially young women, college, young adult age. Divorced and separated women is the highest category of victimization, followed by single women and married women. So married women statistically get stalked the least. Divorced or separated women get stalked the most.
And this is just people who report it.
Yes.
And that's a key factor. we don't know real numbers because people don't report it. And they do that because they're scared. Maybe they're thinking that people will make fun of them, or they won't believe them, or it might escalate. There's all different kinds of reasons. But these are the numbers that we do have, and that's just from things that have been reported. Now, from that point of view, when we're talking about stalking, specifically about women who, and it's not just women, I mean, men do get stalked as well, but it is scary. I mean, these are threats. These are a process of threats being sent to the individual through a variety of methods that it's scary. I mean, it's so I could definitely see the numbers being much, much higher because people don't want to report it. Another piece of it is we don't know how much stalking or these threats that happen, they get claimed that they're something else. So whether it was officially stalking, it was perceived stalking, it was just harassment, whatever it may be. So take those numbers with a grain of salt because the world doesn't really know. But what we do know is the people who do get affected by this and why they get affected by it, at least the ones that we hear about, and the things that we can do to protect them. So a little bit about the personal relationships. I think everyone's been in a personal relationship that has gone bad, and it might be that someone tried to initiate contact again to repair things, and that might have been considered stalking. Uh, because of he said, she said, he said, he said, she said, whatever. That accusation may have been used when it really wasn't, or vice versa. So, I mean, it's really hard. Those numbers are really hard to deal with. And I'm making a big deal out of it because I don't want people to think it's not a problem because the numbers might be low. You know, the 15 to 20% of college students reported online harassment. I know that at my previous, job, we dealt with this a lot. And it wasn't necessarily just from students. We had students with off-campus people who were stalking them, off-campus people who were harassing them. We had athletes that were being stalked. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff happening, and it felt like it was happening a lot. And that's really kind of a scary place to be, is when you have a large populace of people and you have a lot of people stalking people. So again, my experience is maybe a little bit different. I worked in higher ed for a very long time. I've worked with domestic violence victims. I've worked with people who had to have privacy because of stalkers. And so that's one of the reasons why I got into privacy, and really started focusing on personal privacy, was because I was a family friend when I was a kid. She got divorced. She had to get away from this person because he was going to hurt her really badly, possibly kill her. And so she had to hide her and her child. And I remember I was probably 7 or 8 when this was happening. So, I mean, I knew this stuff was happening. And as I got older and I realized all the stuff that she did to protect herself and her kids, it's the same type of stuff we do now in privacy. How you hide your information out online, how you, back then, this is a long time ago, but back then, they would, we'd have these books with phone numbers in them. They're called phone books. I know people don't know what those are anymore. But they were big, sometimes very thick, and they were white pages, real paper you flipped. Just having fun, guys. Calm down. But anyway, we had phone books, and she had to put her last name and first initial in. And the theory was that if they didn't see the first name, that they wouldn't know if it was male or female. Well, what you figured out was everyone that had last name and first initial was female. And that probably wasn't always correct, but that's kind of what you figured out. But what's interesting about it is it would have the name, it would have the address and the phone number, all the information you need to go over and find where they lived. I can't imagine that nowadays. I wouldn't want my phone number and my address and stuff out there for public view. You just go. Well, I used to go to I think it was a Chamber of Commerce. They'd go and they'd have phone books stacked high right inside the door. You walked in and picked one up and you had it for that year. But that's kind of scary that information went out there. But she had to do those things to protect her and her kids. And thinking now, 40 years later, same process. We're just doing it with different technology. Okay, so let's talk about different types of stalkers. I mean, there are a couple of different types of stalkers. So give us the most common versions.
Yeah, so the most common is the obsessional stalker. Once again, we don't really know the numbers. It's estimated that they're between 45 and 60% of the stalkers, and these numbers are from I don't recall who the author is, but it's from a textbook called Cybercrime and Cyberterrorism. It's a very good book. I highly recommend it for anyone interested. But these are stalkers that were involved in a prior relationship, typically, and their actions or that they are committing are typically, like I said earlier, an extension of a pattern of domestic violence and abuse. And so these are, people that either for trying to re-enter a relationship with a former partner or basically trying to get retribution against a former partner, is the motive behind why these people are committing these acts.
Right.
We also have love-obsessed stalkers. This is the second most common, estimated at about 45%. These are actually cases where the victim and the perpetrator don't know each other. Usually these perpetrators are of kind of like a lower social status, and so they seek out a victim. Back before social media, it may have been just, any random person in their life. It may have been a celebrity. Nowadays, they might pick a random stranger off of social media.
Yep.
And they want to pursue a relationship with that person, to the point where it doesn't even matter to them if the relationship is a positive one or a negative one. They're just so desperate for a relationship that anything's enough. There were a couple of other types. We have the erotomaniac stalkers. This one is very, very rare. This is actually unique that this is mostly women that fit into this category. These are stalkers that think that the victim is in love with them, and it's almost always accompanied by mental illness.
Yep.
Overall, that category is not really super dangerous. It's very rare statistically for those types of stalkings to escalate to any amount of physical violence.
Not unheard of.
Not unheard of. Not impossible. And like I said, the definition of stalking is like, what would a reasonable person, what would make them afraid of great bodily harm or death?
Yep.
Just because it's statistically unlikely to get to that point doesn't mean that somebody can't feel that way.
Right.
It can still be, very upsetting and scary. The last category is vengeance terrorism stalkers. These are what we see whenever we have like a disgruntled employee, political activism, terrorism, those types of things. Pretty rare, but I would argue also very dangerous, kind of like the obsession stalkers, very likely to escalate to some, level of violence.
Yeah, and I would say they're probably getting, I hate to use the word more popular now, but there are more people like that right now because of the political divisions, because of things happening on the internet and social media. There's probably a good chance that we are seeing more of that than we have in the past.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how many politicians have we seen in the news that have been attacked, especially in their own homes? We had a Supreme Court justice, someone tried to attack him at his house. Several state legislatures in Minnesota were attacked at their house. The Speaker of the House's husband was attacked. And these aren't just random acts of violence.
No.
And not in those cases.
Yeah, and some of the clients that I used to have, or some people that I've worked with in the past, they may have been high risk for that sort of thing. They were a high profile case. Maybe it was a lawyer, maybe it was law enforcement. I myself have been involved in cases where that was a possibility. Nothing ever happened, thankfully, but it was something that, the DA came to me and says, "Hey, here's a risk." They asked me to continue. He asked me if I would be willing to continue on with the case, even though that risk is there. So, I mean, I think that that's becoming more of an issue as things happen. I guess really what I'm seeing more of is we have more people in a highly emotionally charged state, and that leads to bad decisions and anger. And that can lead to doing things such as stalking people, being angry with them, doing bad things to them, or vice versa. They might be falling in love with them or whatever. And if they don't give that energy back to them, then bad things can happen.
Absolutely. And vengeance and heroism, that was actually kind of my first experience as a child with stalking. I had a family friend who he was being victimized by a stalker. Came out to his he went to the park with his family, came back to find an envelope on the hood of his car under his windshield wiper with photos of his family at the park with threats, basically saying, "I need something from you, help me out or I'm going to hurt your family." And it actually turned out to be someone that he had known and actually had mentored.
Wow.
So, this particular individual basically had some delusions about vigilante work.
Yeah.
And was trying to, extort this individual to assist him with that. So that's kind of the best category that would fit in. But so that was kind of my first experience dealing with stalking as a younger child. I hadn't dealt with the other types of stalking, dealing with prior relationships that had experienced abuse. So it was very interesting as an introduction.
Yeah. Well, I've got kids, and I think about, of course, my experience with stalking or those things and that experience there. Some of the stuff that I have seen in the past that I worry about for my kids is, even so much as things out on online gaming and those pieces of once you have somebody out there that makes that connection and they try to get them to do things or whatever. I mean, you never know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah. And that's I think the uncertainty is one of the things that makes this particularly terrifying to the victims.
Oh, yeah.
Is because, what is the difference between harassment and stalking to them? They don't usually know. Is this just, a comment somebody made? Is this a threat?
Well, and I think no matter what, it's scary.
Yeah.
Think about it. Just go back to the one where you found your friend found the note on the car. I think anybody who were to find a note that had information about them, pictures on their car, they knew which car was theirs. They it would scare them.
Yeah.
And that's the intent, is to cause that fear.
Yeah. Especially because he didn't even threaten, the individual. He threatened his family.
Absolutely.
He said, "You're going to help me or I'm going to hurt your family."
Yeah.
And so that's a whole other, level of, disturbing behavior behind it.
Yeah.
So I guess what should people, we talked very briefly about all of the types of ways that stalkers kind of have begun using technology to kind of facilitate this. We talked about how they use communication, phone calls, emails, social media, and how they use OSINT, how they can go on, Fast People Search or something and look up information about victims, even like posting subtle threats on social media that like only the victim would understand. So, if somebody is experiencing this, I know you mentioned that it is very similar to what we would do normally in cybersecurity, but what should somebody do if they're being victimized?
There's a lot of pieces to that, and there's lots of different levels. In fact, usually when I talk about this process of obtaining privacy for yourself and your family. We talk about a couple of different levels. In fact, I've got a presentation that I do, and it's green, yellow, and red. Green is the privacy controls that everyone should be doing. Yellow is someone who really wants to have more privacy but doesn't really need it. They don't have a specific threat in mind. Then the red is someone that they have a specific threat that someone is targeting them. And it comes down to if a stalker is getting to you, and getting to your person, it's either through communication methods, physically, they're actually showing up where you're at, then those are pieces you have to think about. How do you get them to be more private? Let's talk a very basic one. A lot of people they have email, and they will, if they have a really bad divorce or they will have a bad breakup, they keep that email. And most people is probably fine because that's how everyone communicates with them. Well, there are times when it's appropriate to turn that email over to law enforcement and get a new email and communicate that out to very close families and friends. And then there's another level of you no longer have email. You have maybe a burner account or an account that you use for your electric bill, your water bill, whatever. So those are kind of those levels of when we talk about trying to stay private, try to get away from a stalker. Those are kinds of things you have to do. And there's a lot of pieces to it. It's not particularly complicated, but think witness protection. What I used to tell my clients is we go all the way up into the point of witness protection. So we will do a lot of stuff, whereas when you hit that next level of witness protection, they give you a new identity. But all the stuff you do up until that point, you're trying to get out of the public eye. You're trying to get off social media. You're trying to private your email, your phone numbers, your text messages. You're trying to do all those things to get away from the stalker. And I've had people where they moved. The next level is disinformation or misinformation, where because it is so easy to find information out on the internet, you intentionally put bad information out there. So you put bad addresses out there. So if someone is looking for your address, it's really hard to take your real address off the internet, but you can put bad addresses on for you, and you can put other people's names on your address. So when someone does a search for you, they might find 50, 60, 70 addresses around the U.S. where you might have lived. And then when they look up your address specifically at your house, they might be 50, 60 names associated with it. So those are some of the things that I used to do that I still do for clients. I still do it from a cybersecurity perspective. If an email or a phone number or a social media account has been burned, somebody knows it that's associated with you, then we get rid of it. We lock that down. A lot of things that we can do is don't tell people where you're going to be at. The whole tracking on Facebook. I am at this restaurant. Well, don't do that. If someone is going to track you, that's how they're going to do it. Don't put that out there on the internet. Don't have tracking things. I had a client once who her ex-husband was tracking her phone because they didn't turn that off when they got divorced. So he knew exactly where she was at because, well, he knew where her phone was at. So we haven't even got into Apple trackers and all these other kinds of things that you can use to, if you know where someone is, you know where their car is, put a tracker on. Now, those have gotten better because a phone will tell you, hey, you have a tracker tracking you. But those are different ways of doing it. So, there's a lot of pieces to it. It's not complicated. It's just you have to think about it start to finish. I know I've told about this presentation before, but I've got a presentation that I do that is specific for privacy and privacy steps for personal privacy. And what it is, it's a story. The PowerPoint slides is a story about a woman who gets away from an abuser. She does all these things that she has to do to get her privacy back, to get away from him. She gets away from him. He can't find her. She goes off and starts a new life. He eventually he pays a clever IT guy to find her information. She was involved in the data breach. He gets her address. He goes over and he kills her. Everyone loves the presentation up to the last slide because she has done everything right. And then all of a sudden something went bad. The organization had a data breach and her actual physical mailing address got compromised. And this clever IT guy found it, gave it to the person, and then he went over it. Now, the way the story was, now, understand, this is all true. All the pieces, now there's 3 or 4 different stories that I put together in one presentation, but it's all true. The IT guy was approached by this individual and says, hey, my ex-wife owes me money. Can you get her address so I can send her a bill? And the IT is like, yeah, I can. I'll go on the darknet and find it. Got it, gave it to him. Well, he goes over there and kills her. So this stuff isn't hard, but there's steps you have to do to protect, and you have to know what your risks are. When she gave out her physical address and it got data breached, then that was a problem because now she could be tracked. So the stalker could go to her house, watch her house, do whatever he wanted to do because that information was out there. So those are some of the things, again, there's lots of different pieces. I mean, everything from don't put your house in your own name, put it in a trust. Don't buy a car in your own name. Don't have a cell phone. Use a VoIP number. Don't have a cell phone number that you use for anything legitimate. Use it as a VoIP numbers. I mean, there's all different kinds of things that you can do to keep your privacy to help with this. Now, that doesn't mean you're still not going to get stalked because a stalker can come from any part of your life. It could come from work. It could come from, again, a previous relationship. Some of these, a random person, they just associate you with something in their life they want to attach to, and now they're stalking you.
So I know we just touched a little bit about primarily things that people can do on the cyber side of things, but, it's a lot of work to remove every trace of yourself from the internet. And still, if, some stalkers will follow you physically. Even if they don't have a GPS tracker on you, they might get in their car and drive and they're going to follow you. So, what other things do you recommend for people in terms of like individual security, home security, like defending your property and, like having a evacuation plan, and other steps like that? What type of other things would you, recommend to people that, aside from, the digital stuff to protect themselves?
Well, first, you should always report it. Always report it to law enforcement. I know it may feel like at times that they can't do anything about it, but they need that report to be able to case, to be able to do something about it. So you should always report it. From a physical point of view, you certainly want to protect the knowledge of where you're going to be at, where you're going to be, where your house is, where your work is. You try to hide that as much as you can. You want to have, let's talk about your house. Make sure you have somebody watching it. Have an alarm system that's monitoring it. So, if someone is trying to get into a door, trying to get into a window, and use it. Some people, they won't set the alarm when they leave, but you really need to have that. You need to have door sensors, window sensors, break glass sensors, anything like that, because you need to know if someone is getting in your house when you're not there, or even if you are there. You need to know how to get away. If you're in a house and you have a stalker at your house, how do you get away? You could hop in your car and leave, but they could follow you. Some of this, it really sounds paranoid. And I know some people are going to like, oh, do you really need to do that? Well, in some cases you do. When you're talking a high risk individual or they're in a high risk situation, you get away, go someplace safe. I always recommend go to the police station. It's really hard for someone to do something at the police station. Not unheard of, but it's hard. If you can't get there, go to a safe place. Some places got cameras, some places got lights. If you think someone is following you, call up 911 and tell them that. Tell them, hey, I've got someone that's following me. Where can I go that's safe? And they'll send a car and help you. There's lots of different things. That could be hours upon hours of talking about the individual pieces, but my advice is you want to have somebody helping you. So an alarm system. You could have a security detail. So if again, high risk, you could have a security detail that's also watching you, that's doing the same thing the stalker is doing. They're just doing it for you. And they will come in and they will evaluate your physical locations. They will evaluate people around you and protect you and be that second set of eyes. Um, there's just so much.
Yeah. One of the big things that I always tell people as well, especially young women who are experiencing this, and Sam, just cut this out if we don't want to go here, but buy a gun. I mean, um, if you're being victimized, one of the benefits of living in this country is that we have the ability to procure the means to defend ourselves from imminent fear of great bodily harm or death.
I will definitely say that when you're talking, I do a lot of women's self-defense, and this question comes up a lot. And one of the things that we talk about is when you have someone that has intent to do you harm, they want to do you harm. You have to defend yourself in every method you can. If that's driving over them with a car, okay, got it. Go for it. If that's using a weapon, using a gun, we are very fortunate that we have laws here in the United States that allow us to protect ourselves. And some states encourage it, which I think is a wonderful thing. You should be able to defend yourself. I'll tell you this. Usually people who want to cause fear to someone, they don't do it to someone bigger than them. Let's go back to the statistics. I mean, it's women 18 to 24, divorced, separated, face higher rates. I mean, that
physically speaking, that is the most, aside from children, that is the most vulnerable demographic. I mean, besides elderly people. And acquiring the means to protect yourself is it's an equalizer.
It is.
One of the other unfortunate things too is, especially in a lot of these cases that we've seen, the police, they, before really the laws started changing, the police can't do anything about it. They're like, oh, well, you're getting a bunch of harassing phone calls in our state.
Your phone.
In our state, that's not a crime yet. We can't do anything actionable, even though that demonstrates a pattern of, behavior that is becoming more and more, violent, indicative of future violence. And so, unfortunately, some places the police just, they might not have the ability legally to do anything to help you because from their perspective, there hasn't been a crime yet.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that there's no danger, but it means that there's
no well, and I think that's the key issue is they may see danger, they may see a risk, but they may not have legal means to classify that as that person is threatening them. We need to do something about it, because a lot of times you can't, the reality is you can't arrest someone for something they might do. And as it relates to domestic violence or stalking or whatever, they have to do it first before a lot of times the legal side can come in and do something about it. And it's really hard. So there may be some of this we have to cut out. So if you're listening to this part and it's really confusing because we haven't talked about the stuff in the middle, we apologize, but that's just the world we live in nowadays. Everyone in my world, everyone has a right to privacy. Everyone has a right to protect themselves. And there are steps that you have to take for yourself and your children or your family and your loved ones that you've got to do those things to protect them. Now, I am very big in terms of building privacy programs within the household, talking about children, talking about loved ones, talking about grandparents and family members. In fact, I was I've got a very close family member who has had a cyber incident happen to them, and we helped it, help clean it up, or I helped her clean it up. And the first thing she says was, "I've got people who are at risk to this exact same thing. Will you come and help them as well?" So we're putting together a little get together, a little lunch thing to where I can go in and talk to them about the stuff we deal with every day, but they've never heard about. This sort of thing is part of that. They don't know it's a problem until something has happened, and then sometimes it's too late. So I am always a big proponent of your own security plan, your own privacy plan, your own self-protection on this. And again, we're very fortunate. We live in the United States. We do have the ability to protect ourselves. We have the ability to have self-defense mechanisms, whether it be martial arts, whether it be you get a firearm, whether it be you get security from the outside to come in and help you. There's all these avenues. And I'll tell you, every single one of those can be helpful. So if you are the victim of domestic violence, if you are a victim of someone stalking you, you don't have to be the victim. You don't have to let this happen. Go and talk to people. Go and talk to law enforcement. Go and talk to security professionals that can help you maybe get more security and more privacy. Go take a training class in firearms usage. Go take martial arts. Go do these things. That gives you the power to defend yourself. That gives you the power to have more privacy. You the power to have more security.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things on top of acquiring the skills and means to, protect your home and yourself is to inform trusted people.
Yeah.
Tell your friends if you're being victimized. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell the police. Tell trusted professionals. Make people aware of what's
Yeah.
going on. So at least if you disappear someday and are never found again, at least people have a place to start looking.
And that's what a stalker will want to do a lot of times, especially for domestic violence victims, is they want to isolate them. They want to drive out all family members and all communities so they don't have anywhere to turn to.
Yeah.
And then they turn to that stalker, that domestic violence attacker. And I can absolutely see that. I mean, I know it works because it's happened to people where they felt so isolated so long because no one would listen to them. And I'll tell you, that's why we have this concept of community. Your community of your family, community of your friends, even to the extent of community to your law enforcement. I know the don't want to cry wolf syndrome. I mean, I understand that. But if your police, your sheriff, your PD, if they don't know this person is a problem, then there is nothing they can do. Now, they may be limited in what they can do when they know it's a problem, but it's better to let them know and at least get that process started. Definitely talk to your lawyer. Your lawyer is someone who, hopefully, someone who you can trust. I've got a lot of lawyer friends that I do trust them. And I've met people who they helped victims, and they would do things for victims to protect them. They get them in the right spot, get them connected to the right people, the right programs. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can do. I mean, and again, we're on the cyber side. I do stuff on the privacy side as well. But this is just one aspect of this. You still have physical security, and we do a little bit of physical security in terms of making sure fences and buildings and cars and everything are safe. But you can hire a security guard. I mean, most people don't think about that, but I have considered that where I would not have been able to do a particular thing to protect my kids or my wife. So I called up some friends and I was like, hey, how much would it be to get you for 5 hours just to be a security guard for this event? And I'll tell you, having someone there that is supporting you, that's helpful. I mean, it makes you feel better. I've been very fortunate. I've had great community. But I know there's a lot of people that may not have that community. So to your point, build it. Build that community, build that safety net. And then that way it can protect you in these sorts of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that you said was, tell your attorney. I think most people that are experiencing stalking, they want to get a protective order in place if they can. I think that that's a very common goal amongst victims is if I can get in court and I can get a VPO,
Yeah.
this is over. It's done. I'm safe, which is not necessarily true
No.
at all. But What are some of the challenges that people can face when trying to get a protective order?
Well,
You have to have evidence, of course, and I think acquiring evidence of it can be
sure.
difficult in some of these cases.
Well,
So,
it's he said, she said, or he said, person said, person said. It's really hard to prove the intent of that individual. It may have just been harassment, or it might be stalking, and that's really hard to prove. It's hard to have true intent attribution, and you have to look at it from the court's perspective. A judge has to go, yes, this is a credible threat. But if there's not evidence of that, if there's just said feelings, which may be completely accurate and may be completely true, but then you have the other side that's saying the complete opposite. Maybe they're lying. Okay, but how does the judge know that? So that proof is really, really important. Now, there are some things that you can do in terms of the cyber side to collect that proof.
yeah.
And we have helped clients in the past, usually from a legal perspective and from law enforcement perspective, to show where somebody was at based off cell phone records, to show things that they said in their email, in their text messages, things that they were on the phone, pictures that were sent. Some of those things can be gotten, through a process. But that comes down to proof. How do you prove it? And I think that's where the hardest thing is going to a judge and proving that someone is stalking or harassing you to the extent that you need that protective order. And that protective order is only certain things. And I'll tell you this, I never knew a protective order that if somebody wanted to break it, they didn't break it. I mean, that's just a reality. The protective order is a piece of paper, effectively. But it just says you can't come within X amount of feet. You can't contact this person. But if they have the intent to break that, well, they're just going to do it. It's just like lying on the stand. An honest person is not going to lie when they're up there in front of the judge, but a dishonest person would.
Yeah. Well, I do think that there are benefits to protective orders.
I do too.
The main one being, from my perspective, is that, provided all the information is passed along to the FBI properly,
Yep.
having a protective order telling you to stay
Sure.
away from someone makes you a prohibited possessor
Yes.
of firearms. It makes it a felony for you to possess firearms. So,
From a legal point of view.
from a legal point of view, it doesn't stop them from doing it. If they're going to commit a crime, they're going to commit a crime.
Absolutely. And I think that
But-
that's the problem, though, is you can get a protective order. That doesn't mean someone's going to follow it.
Absolutely.
And I will say this, and I am not saying don't get a protective order. I'm saying go talk to your attorney, do everything you can to document it all and get that to the judge so they can see it. So if something does happen, you have at least those pieces. But you also need to put things in place to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Because, again, that protective order is just a court order. It's just a, hey, don't do this. If someone has the intent to break it, they will just go break it.
Yeah. I think the documentation is really the key thing. Screenshot things, write them down, have a journal, write down dates and times with detailed accounts of what happened. Because in some cases that's all you can do. I mean, if somebody's actually physically following you, how do you document that?
Yeah.
That's very challenging, shy of maybe hiring a private investigator to follow them around.
Oh, yeah.
Which you could do, but
and people do.
Yeah. But it's for, especially when we're talking about the demographic of like young college age women, money isn't exactly a resource available to most college kids. Most college kids probably couldn't afford to hire an attorney. They couldn't afford to hire a PI. They couldn't afford private security. And I think that is a whole nother layer of challenge on top of this. Is the most vulnerable demographic to this is the one with the least amount of resources.
So here's some things that I always tell people. I should have thought this earlier. I just didn't. Number one, you have to tell someone to stop. So if you have a stalker or someone you think is stalking you or even harassing you, the first thing you really have to do is tell them to stop. If you don't tell them to stop, you can still go and get a protective order. You still get this, but it's much easier to say, I told them to stop. They continue doing it. Therefore, they're harassing me.
You have to make it clear that it is welcome.
Yes. So tell them to stop. Document that. And then document everything, number one, up until that point, and then everything after that. Because you want to be able to put yourself in the position of they were doing this. I told them to stop. They didn't. I am now requesting help. The other thing to do is don't engage. If they're sending you text messages, don't respond. You can collect them, hand that over to your lawyer or to law enforcement, whatever, but don't respond. There was a case very recently that I had a friend who was part of. They were a jury. And this is all after the case is over, so everything is now public knowledge. But it was interesting. There was a man and a woman, and there was some form of domestic violence. And during the case, there was domestic violence on both sides, to the extent of he had a baseball bat and she had a hammer or something. I mean, it was significant. I mean, there was assault on both sides. Well, that's problematic because that was confusing the jury and the court of like, okay, who was the real victim here? That was an odd case. I get that. But if you're in a situation like this, you have to tell them to stop, and then you have to disengage. You have to say, I am not going to engage. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to send them any texts. I'm not going to do anything. If you need to communicate, if you can't afford a lawyer, have your lawyer communicate with them. Hey, here's the court order. Leave us alone. Do not come to our place of work or whatever. All the way to the extent of maybe you have to get a different job. Maybe you have to move. Let's say you're renting an apartment, you can move to another apartment. You have to do all these things to get away from the situation. Now, I'm not saying the victim has to always get away, but you have to do whatever you can to get out of the situation to protect yourself. So those would be some of the things that I tell people, like, tell them to stop, document everything, get it to the lawyer, get it to law enforcement, and then get yourself out of the situation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think in these types of situations, people are afraid to get away.
Yeah.
They the victim shouldn't have to get away. They should just
I
understand the problem. But sometimes it is a sad reality that just leaving and having a plan to escape a situation and move to a different location or find a different job or move to another state if necessary.
You have to put yourself in safety.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to find safety somewhere, and it's not a slight if someone says, "Hey, I have to get away from this." I tell you guys, I tell my engineers, if they're in a situation that they don't feel comfortable in, get out. I'll deal with the consequences of that. If you're with a client and they get physical, it's just in a bad, leave. Let me know about it and we'll figure it out. But the first thing to do is to get somewhere safe, to put yourself in safety. So I think it's the same way. And you're right. People shouldn't have to do that. I get it. But we live in reality. You should always put you and your family members in a place of safety first. Then we can figure out all the other pieces. But get safe, then, put all the other pieces in place.
Yeah.
So we're at 55 minutes or so, and pretty soon someone's going to start throwing stuff at us to finish up this podcast. It was a little bit darker this time. I will say this. This is something that hits close to home with me because I've known people that have dealt with this, and I've helped people with this. And I hate the fact that it's got to be that way. I hate the fact that we have to do these things to protect them. But the reality is we do. And if you go to any presentation that I do, and probably even most podcasts that I do, I will always say, first thing we do is protect people. Our job is to protect people. And when we're talking about this sort of thing, this is why we do it, because we don't want people to be a victim of something bad. And I appreciate Peters coming on with me and talking about this. It's a hard topic to talk about because it does get emotional. Even from our side, I was brought up wanting to protect people. I have daughters and a son that I want to protect. And everything that I've done teaching them cybersecurity and privacy, physical security, self-defense is to prevent something like this from happening to them. Now, maybe it won't prevent it. I hope it does. I hope they never have to deal with this. But if it does, I want them to be prepared for it. And I think that's really the secret, is be prepared for it. And when something does happen, do something about it. Go talk to your community. Go talk to a lawyer. Go talk to law enforcement. Put yourself in a safe position. And then figure the rest out. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us for episode 99. I promise our episode 100 is not going to be as dark. It will be a bit more fun. We really appreciate everyone joining us today. If you could, please give us a like and a review on our podcast. This really helps get us out there for people to see. We love doing this informational type of podcast for people because I think it helps people. It gives them some information that maybe they didn't have before. So thank you so much. We will see you in a week or so on episode 100. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day or evening or week or however long it is until our next episode. Thanks, everybody.
The Secure AF Podcast is a production of Alias Cybersecurity. Visit us online at aliascybersecurity.com. All rights reserved.